We can also have enumerated classes in Kotlin. So in the case where we have a bunch of different predefined values that we want to operate with. So let's say, for instance, I have an Enum class here. I declare it as Enum class, and then I say priority. And basically, I just declare the different types. So here or the different values. So I say minor, I can say normal, major, and critical. Now I separate these by commas. I can put them on each line. So that gives me now access to different enumerated values. If I want to actually provide, use these, I can just say, for instance, val priority equals priority normal. And there I have the value normal. Now if I go print line and I do priority, let's see what happens, what prints out. So you can see that I have normal. So by default, it's taking the value of a toString basically and just printing it out. And we'll see how we can override this in a moment. But I can actually initialize properties, kind of like give properties to enumerators as well. So let's say, for example, here I say a val value of type integer. And then I can say that this is -1, for instance, and now this is a 0, this is 1, and this is through the roof, it's a 10. Okay, so now let's go ahead and print this out. And of course, this is going to print out the actual normal that we saw. So how do I get access to the value? Well, as could be expected, with the property value. So if we run this, we can see that I have normal 0. So each one has now a property, and we can assign it, initialize it with whatever we see fit. Now, in addition to the value here, which we've just added, we don't actually have to be explicit about this, right? Because I can remove this property here, and if we go back to what we had, we can see that if I use the sorry. We've created this value property, which, as we've seen, that we can access, but the enums also come with their own properties. So priority, as we're printing out, is basically invoking the toString, right? So we've seen that that is literally just printing it out as a string. But we also have an ordinal value for a priority. So I can actually come here and say ordinal, and that's going to print out the ordinal position. So in the case of this, it should, we see as we execute, it's going to print out a 1 because it is 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I remove this, and let's say that we just directly call priority critical, value is the property we created, and ordinal built in, name, etc. Ordinal, what's that going to do? It's going to print out the value 3 because it's 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Also, we have the name. So here I can print out the actual name of the ordinal, and we can see that it coincides with the toString. Now, what happens if, for instance, I want to override that? I can do that, and we'll see that in a moment. We can actually create the toString right now. As you can see, basically what it's doing is just printing out the name property, but we can override that. But before saying that, we can also kind of like enumerate these as well. So let's say that I have this list of priorities, and I want to go through them. So I can do for priority, and then do in priority dot values, right? And values is what's going to give me the list of different entries that I have. Now, the warning that here you're getting is that it's saying that it's shadowed. Why? Because I've already created a variable called priority here. So let's just rename that to priority in list, whatever. And we can go ahead and say priority in list. And let's loop through that, and we can see that it gives us the list of all of the different values that we have. So values is giving us a list of each entry, and that's how we can access these. Much in a different way, if we want to access an actual Enum value, what we can do is use the value of. So I can say priority value of, and then by name reference it. So I can say major, for instance. And this is going to give me back another one. So I can say print line, P, and then again here get the ordinal, etc. So running this, we should see that this is going to give me the ordinal of major, which should be value 2. Okay. So value of can look up a Enum value by name. Values will give us all of them. Now, as we saw before, let's get rid of all of this. We saw before, when we do a print line of priority, it's going to invoke the toString, which is going to default to the name. What happens if I want to override this? I can do so. Basically, I can come here and create a kind of like a body here and say override toString. And here I can say, for instance, I want this to be minor priority. So let's go ahead and return this. Okay. So if I print this out, let's change this to minor so that we can see the actual value. And let's go ahead and print this out. You can see that that's changed to minor priority. Okay. Now this toString is built in. So we can actually override it because it's going to use. What happens, we can actually declare our member functions as well here that are abstract and then override them for each case. So let's go ahead and, for instance, create our own kind of like toString, and we're going to call it abstract fun text. So we're going to call it So let's go ahead and create our own function, and we're going to call it text. And notice that it's abstract, and see that the compiler is going crazy here. Now, remember when I said to you that there is one place where Kotlin requires semicolons? This is it. So now that we've declared this function abstract, obviously all of these are going to give us an error because they need to implement their own version of text. So we can just say Alt-Enter and go ahead and create these for each entry. And the last one. Okay. Now, see this little error here? Remember where I said that in Kotlin at some point in time you need to use a semicolon in a specific place? It's here. That's where we need the semicolon. So we get rid of that compiler error. And now we have an override for each of these values for the function text. I'm not going to implement all of them, but let's just go ahead and do the minor one, and we can say that this is, for instance, returns minor priority with square brackets, for instance. And then we can just do print line and then text and call that. So you can have member functions and properties. Okay. Now again, if all you want to do is just change the way that the actual text is returned, then your best bet is to just override toString, which is already provided for each of these priority values.